Hey guys, Ben here and welcome back to another video on The Flash Season 9. Today we're going to be doing my review for episode 12, also known as the second to last episode of The Flash ever. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future DCTV videos later this year. So this is a major episode. As I said, this is the penultimate episode of the entire show. Next week we are getting the series finale of The Flash, so that's The Flash Season 9 episode 13. Obviously you guys are going to want to stay up to date with my Flash content over the next week. I will continue to make videos. I'm going to have a trailer breakdown out later today about that final episode trailer. But for now, let's go ahead and get into this review / breakdown of the episode. So the episode opens with Eddie and the CCPD captain from the future going through a singularity. It just appears out of nowhere, but we're pretty sure it's because of Eddie, and that gets explained later in the episode. But the negative speed force is attacking Team Flash across space and time. That's established straight away after that. We've pretty much known this for a while, and so they are basically theorizing that negative speed force is bouncing Barry around across time, and according to them, he's heading towards 2049. And so it's also likely that the crystal is there too, because it's been following Barry wherever he's gone. But also it's been following Team Flash too, and everyone that Barry cares about. And so if Barry dies, apparently the timeline will be erased forever. I don't know if that entirely makes sense, but that's what Speed Force Nora says when she shows up at the start of the episode. And so then we hop forward to 2049. You have future Chester and Allegra. They're married. You see future Cecile. She pretty much looks the same. But then we hop over to the Flash Museum, where we have Eddie Thawne, who walks into there trying to find the Flash. And so you get to see this report on the screen. It's a video report of the Flash's greatest enemies, including his main nemesis, that being the Reverse Flash, and he sees that it's not the same version of Reverse Flash that he previously helped to stop, and so he's like, this can't be right, and he's like, this didn't happen like this because I saw Reverse Flash die in front of me. And I think this is exactly where the jealousy starts, because he starts to realize that maybe his sacrifice was for nothing. And so this is like the initial seed that is planted in his head. Obviously, he's had Cobalt Blue's voice in his head this whole time as well, kind of hinting him towards accepting that power into becoming the negative Speed Force avatar. And so Eddie gets to see what could be his potential daughter if he fixed things and accepted the power of the Cobalt Blue crystal. But before he can accept her hand, he is intercepted by the real Nora, who is pretty much a lookalike of the Nora that he could have if he was with Iris in the future. It's a pretty obvious move, and I don't think it makes so much sense that she looks exactly the same, but we get the idea. It's pretty obvious that, you know, it's supposed to be like, okay, this is what you could have if you were to basically take up the power. But with the singularities popping up, Team Flash starts to question why they're popping up, and so later in the episode it's made clear that it's all to do with Eddie's emotions, and so he is the one that is creating these singularities, just like the one that he obviously got swept up in. And so let's go over to Cecile, because Cecile is probably the one part of the episode that I wasn't totally into, and that is she is basically going to force project herself, or kind of like in Doctor Strange, astral project, and she's going to project her consciousness into the future. I just feel like Cecile has been really forced in terms of character development, especially in terms of her getting powers. Her powers are really OP, and her powers develop at a rate that's faster than literally anyone. And so I just didn't think this story actually worked with her projecting herself into the future, because I don't think it's realistic in terms of her power set. But back at Star Labs, you have the mention that Barry is off-world, and he is in fact in the Watchtower, which is circling the moon. It's on orbit around the moon because he's on the dark side. So Nora isn't able to get a message across to him from the time vault, but she records a message in order to get his attention. So that's 2049 Barry, that is future Flash himself, and he's in the Watchtower. So I guess the Justice League is going good, which is a really nice Easter egg. But it's at this point that Nora gets possessed, because you see the Cobalt Blue crystal on the ground. She picks it up and becomes instantly possessed. She then, having intercepted and saved Eddie before she was possessed, goes to Eddie and takes him to Mercury Labs because she basically gives him some insight about what he should be doing. Obviously, she's doing this all with the intent of getting Eddie to accept the power that the crystal holds, and that's because she's possessed by Cobalt Blue. But anyway, so Cecile goes ahead, she's astral projecting into the future. As she works, she gets into her future self's body, and she has a few interactions with Chester and Allegra, which makes her realize that she's not a good mom. I think this was about time. Like, honestly, it's not very good parenting to be like, okay, I'm gonna choose being a superhero over being your parent and see you like on the weekend, but sometimes not even come back on the weekend. So I just don't understand what they were trying to do with Cecile. I think she's been on this path and they've just not been sure about like the actual destination for a long time, and so that's why they've been kind of winging it. I get that feeling. And so yeah, she's hearing that she's a bad mom and she's like, okay, this is enough, I'm gonna go back to the present, and she does that. But in the future there is reference to the Chronarch Wars, which is something that obviously we've never seen, but it's a teaser for the future. Imagine we could get some sort of story that continued along that path. Maybe a Flash spin-off, that would be awesome, like a Nora, Bart Allen Flash spin-off. Oh my god, that would be insane. I would love to see that. But that's teased by Chester. I don't think that's ever going to come to fruition. It's just an Easter egg. Okay, so let's move over to Eddie, because Eddie realizes that he didn't randomly pop up decades after he died. And this is obviously prodded on by Cobalt Blue Nora, who is talking to Eddie, bringing him to Mercury Labs. And he realizes that there must be a purpose for why he's back, because he's been resurrected. He's not just survived the singularity or something. He's actually been resurrected by a force out there. And so maybe it has something to do with the other Thorns, is what evil Nora suggests. Obviously, you get the flashback to when Thorn was like, you are one of the most insignificant Thorns, which was a key point in his past, because obviously he realized if he died, like, he could wipe out Reverse Flash, because they are family at the end of the day. So Nora continues to tease Eddie in order to get him to become the negative Speed Force avatar, and as Cobalt Blue Nora finds herself alone, she talks into the crystal saying, you were right, he's what we need, he's what we've been looking for, talking to the crystal. But they haven't explained what it actually is yet. I think they should definitely do that by the end of the season. I don't believe that we're actually going to get that. I think they're just going to leave it to our interpretation as to how the crystal works and what actually is its true function, or how it was created. I don't think we're actually going to get that, but I would like to see that. And so it's at this point that Barry shows up out of nowhere and he meets the possessed Nora. Obviously he doesn't know at this point, but he quickly finds out as they hug and Nora electrocutes him, he's knocked out. And then we go to the break, and once we're back we have obviously him getting up and Eddie appearing, and then Barry and Eddie have this nice little reunion. They run away to Eddie's house in this certain part in the future, but it's good seeing the two of them back together, because it's been a long time. Obviously we've seen various versions of Eddie in our time traveling journeys over the years, but this is actual Eddie Thorne beyond what we saw in the past. And so he's like, I used to be Malcolm Gilmore, and they realize that Malcolm's life is completely false, and Barry realizes that Eddie has been brought back to life in order to make him become the Avatar, and that's his sole purpose. So that is a huge twist, and you can see the negative tachyons. Barry points it out in terms of, like, you know, his ID showing up and having a different name. It's basically all the negative Speed Force who has orchestrated everything, brought back Eddie to life, and has literally been behind all of this in order to try and get him to take up that power. And I think, as I've said recently, this is literally him becoming Cobalt Blue, and it's his origin story that we're seeing. And so it's really a full circle moment for him, because I believe the voice in his head is actually himself, and it's himself from the future. Obviously it's an older version of himself. We don't know where he is at this specific time. He can be pretty much anywhere at once, and we've already established that. He basically goes through the crystal and takes over people for short periods of time in order to be in various places at once. But after this, we have this not very good scene actually. It's a bad pep talk by Chester, and it's not really helpful for Cecile as a mum, and that's her main struggle here. So I really don't get the purpose of this scene because it really does not help her. And quite honestly, I think this is a waste of a scene because, yeah, it just did not work in my opinion. Let me know, what do you think about that in the comments down below. What do you think about Cecile in this episode in general? Like, I'm just not buying it. I'm not really digging it. But talking of good stuff, let's go back to Eddie. Barry continues to try and convince him not to take on that power and become the Avatar, but Eddie can still hear the crystal talking to him from within inside himself. He's going crazy, and at this point he realizes he wants Barry's life. He even picks up a photo frame of the whole West Allen family and he transforms it to the way that he wants to have his family, obviously with his own kid, with Iris. And it's at this point that Cobalt Blue Nora screams out in the city for the Flash to bring the Avatar, bring Eddie to her. So Barry trusts that Eddie's going to make the right decision. He runs off, he goes to face Cobalt Blue Nora to try and stop her and save Nora in the process, whilst also eliminating the Cobalt Blue threat. And so it's at this point that old Iris meets Eddie Thorne as he breaks into her apartment with a hidden key that obviously he would only know about because they used to live together. And so it was a nice scene seeing this reunion. I think Candace is really good in this scene. And so Eddie has to come to a decision to what he's going to do. And I guess in his mind he's thinking, okay, if I talk to Iris, like, I'm gonna know what I'm gonna do and hopefully she takes me back, but if she doesn't take me back, she's gonna regret it. And when Iris obviously rejects him, he's like, you're going to regret that, you, Barry, and everything you both love. So Eddie has chosen the dark side. He has become tainted. He is almost Anakin Skywalker in this story because he is good, but he's been tempted by the dark side and he has given into it. And so whilst this is happening, we have Barry and Nora still going at it in Central City in 2049, and Barry is actually helped out by a surprise guest, that being Cecile from the future, who goes by Virtue. That is her superhero name. I think it's a bit on the nose, but anyway, it's a decent name, I guess. But she's thinking she's Doctor Strange. She's like astral projecting, like she literally punches Nora out of herself, well, you know, the Cobalt Blue version, and she's able to free her. Like, she's pretty OP, and this is one of my main problems. It's like, she's way too OP for having barely any training. Like, every time she tries to train, she gets like overwhelmed by her powers, and yet somehow in the future she has mastered it, and she is this superhero. She's got even a costume. It very much so looks like a copy of Nicole Mains's Near Now Dreamer costume. But yeah, so it's an interesting thing that they did. I guess this was just inevitable because she's been focusing on being a hero over being a mum, and in this episode she actually chooses to be a hero over being a mum because of Chester's pet talk. So I don't know, you're gonna have to take that as you will. But in the meantime, as Iris chooses Barry over Eddie, the negative speed force storm starts again. You can see the lightning, the red lightning in the sky crackling off, and it's actually apparently the timeline fracturing. It's an interesting way of showing it, but I guess it makes sense considering this is the negative speed force that is in charge of all of this. And so it's clear that Eddie has made his decision, and so Barry goes to talk with future Team Flash, and he just explains to them that the attacks are happening simultaneously across the timeline. That's why they can't remember any of these attacks, so they're not going to get any sort of insights into how to defeat Cobalt Blue in this instance. And so it's at this point that future Iris walks into the room and she's like, Barry, we have to talk. And so it's a nice moment between them. Obviously future Iris is from the future, she's older, she hasn't seen this version of Barry in a long time. But basically it just acts as a really nice moment and a little bit of an explainer for what's going on, because obviously Iris was the last person to see Eddie, and she ends on this great line, no matter what life throws at us, we'll face them together, always. I thought this was a great West Allen moment, and a moment that was much needed. especially for the ending of the episode, because this kind of ties in the present to the future, and it's just nice to know that they're just as solid in the future anyway. And so the ending of the episode, the post-credits, is Eddie Thawne in his old lab, and he's there ready to accept the power of Cobalt Blue and to end the legacy of Barry Allen forever, as Cobalt Blue says to Eddie. And we see in the Cobalt Blue crystal Barry's greatest villains. They are going to be returning next episode, that being Reverse Flash, Sabotage, Zoom, Godspeed, and of course Cobalt Blue. So they're going to all be suited up. Eddie is going to have a costume in the next episode. He opens the singularity at the end of this episode, and I guess he goes into it and gets those villains in order to try and defeat the Flash once and for all. So that does it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. I'm sorry that my voice is kind of dying. I don't know why it's happening, but this was a hype episode. I would give it like an 8.5 out of 10. It's not fully perfect, and that's because of the Cecile scenes in my opinion. But yeah, that pretty much does it. Remember, we're going to be making Flash videos all this week as we head towards the series finale, so don't miss any videos. So make sure the notifications are on once you've subscribed to me. But for now, you can click on the top right corner of the screen to watch my latest video, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.
I see red.